Hey, Grafted family, what is happening?
Woo! We just watched episodes 4, 5, and 6.
In theaters, on the big screen.
Season 4 of The Chosen, and it was long. It was... It's a long time to be... It was like Lord of the Rings extended edition.
We said this last time, we're not necessarily like movie buffs, you know?
That's true.
Like, we're not...
How did we end up doing this?
I don't know, that's really funny.
Bible nerds.
We are Bible nerds. Love the Bible. Hello, everybody that's watching. I can't read your names because the screen's too far away and my eyes aren't as what they used to be.
This is not our full reaction videos. This is our initial reaction. When they release those on video, we'll do a longer reaction video to each episode. So like, subscribe, and click
those noties.
The notification bell. So Sam.
Let's go. Let's jump in.
Overall feelings.
Yeah, I think overall we're both feeling a little like it's a bit heavy.
Heavy.
There's a lot going on.
Really? I mean, there's
a lot going on.
A lot of sadness, a lot of sorrow, a lot of even just you're starting to feel this march toward the cross.
Yeah.
And so, and then Yeshua's starting to just tell the disciples.
I mean, he's starting to make it plain. He made it real plain, which he does in the text, you know, and they're not getting it.
They're not getting it. And he's getting frustrated.
It's a little frustrated.
Which we don't think about a whole lot.
We don't.
He's getting frustrated. He's like, he's talking to his mother, right? He's like, I'm telling them, and they're not getting it.
He goes off and he prays, and you know, it's like he's wrestling. He's wrestling because this is who he is. This is the mission, and his closest people to him. It's kind of like, So overall, we're feeling a little bit like it's heavier.
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're okay with heavy.
Well, we're in the middle of the story too. I mean, this is the plot. It's plot, and it's you know, but there's a lot of hard things they're dealing with as well. So let's just jump right in. What are some highlights of the 3 episodes?
So my main highlight, which this is just fun. Well, I'm gonna grab my Bible because it's actually in 2 different sections of your book. It's when Gaius comes before Jesus and asks him to heal his servant. So again, there's extra biblical stuff around it, but I think they captured the essence of some of this stuff just beautifully.
Right.
So we do want to encourage you, like, go read these things we're going to talk about because it's super important that you know what the text says. Matthew 8 is one version of this, and then Luke 7 is the other version of this. But there's a couple spots that I'm like, that was great. So mostly 2 things. So Gaius comes in, and he doesn't feel like he's worthy, which, you know, the Gospels point out. And he walks in, and he meets Jesus, and he kneels before him and calls him Lord.
Yeah.
And to just be able to see that with your natural eyes and not just read it was like, that was so. To me, that was the absolute pinnacle of these 3 episodes. That was it. When he falls on his knee and calls him Lord.
Right.
And here's why. Because you think about the Roman Empire, and even if you know very little about it, like, these were people under authority. These were people in a very strict, you know, reality. And
powerful.
And powerful. And to call someone else Lord was a really big deal.
Exactly.
So when you give your allegiance to someone else besides Rome, like, what? Like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, do you know what you're doing? Yeah. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so that was cool. And
he's a Gentile too.
Exactly.
So and this is like the first depiction
Hits home.
Of a Gentile, you know, in this all Jewish context. So I think that also hits like really powerfully.
For sure. Then you know, his servant gets healed, right? That's amazing and cool. Jesus just says the word. It's like a 3-pointer, you know.
NBA.
A fadeaway 3-pointer, you know. But from a distance, right? Does the distance healing.
From a distance.
But the part I thought was really fun because, we talk about this all the time. When you follow Yeshua, it changes everything.
Changes
right?
everything.
It just and it affects every part of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see this depiction of Gaius going home, like he's buying toys and he's like excited and he gets home. And the first thing I noticed him doing is blowing out these idolatrous candles in his house. He's like, I'm like, yes! Like he's a disciple. Like he's following, like he's like, no more idolatry. I know this one is God.
Right.
And I'm gonna follow him.
So
good. I was just like, that's so cool.
I love it.
That's so cool.
And there was some other I'm with you. That's my probably my favorite highlight of all three episodes is Gaius. And he said in that same scene, Peter says like, he's worthy. He's telling Yeshua, he's like, he's worthy to, and that's actually from the scripture.
It is, yeah.
And Peter doesn't actually say it in the scripture, but like they're capturing that.
Yeah.
And then he says something that really hit me because I wrote it down. He said that he loves our people, and he helps us.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of Cornelius, another Roman centurion from Acts chapter 10, who was a God-fearer.
Yes.
And you look in Acts chapter 10, and it describes that he actually helped, he aided the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And it describes that he was a God-fearer and was respected by the Jewish community.
Yeah, I mean, he was all in.
Right.
He was like doing the prayers and the whole
Peter's
thing.
vouching for him.
Right.
And so I just love that comparison. Very much mirrors Cornelius. And it's probably we're pulling from that even a little bit.
I wasn't thinking about that, but it's so
love
true.
that depiction. I'm with you.
Yeah. So again, I mean, Gaius, that's not a name we know, but the story was just
I think
beautiful.
the stuff they added, anytime The Chosen has this, it's really we got to frame it this way. We've talked about this before, but really The Chosen is doing something called midrash.
Okay, let's talk about
or
that.
A Guttic midrash, where they're telling a story that's beyond the biblical text. They're filling in gaps. They're adding to the story in order to teach and in order to connect you with what their understanding is of
their interpretation
of God, the Bible, of Yeshua. And so I think if you watch The Chosen and you think of it with this mindset that it's midrash, I think you'll get more out of it. If you read it or watch it and you're thinking, is this all biblical or not? I think you'll just get into critique land and you'll just be frustrated. And because I think if you look at it as a midrash, then the stuff that really is biblical, you're like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
And then you won't just be negative Nancy, because they're not claiming that this is how it was.
Sure.
They're not saying, but they're adding to the story clearly.
Right.
So
and that's part of what we want to encourage you, the small influence that we have compared to them, but they would say the same thing is go read the text.
Exactly.
Like search the scriptures and enjoy. We were just praying beforehand, and we were just thanking the Lord for the fact that we have this book.
Right.
And it's so important to eat the scroll, to eat this book and tear it apart and know it, know it front to back.
So go read John. Chapters. What do we say?
We said
10, 11, and 12, because so much of these three episodes are about John 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah.
So even if you've already seen it, I'd say go read them afterwards.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, read them beforehand, because it really will help you get more of the context of what they're trying, the essence of what they're trying to capture, and I think you'll get more out of it.
Well, look, I want to jump into John 10, 11, 12, but before we do, there was one other one that we really enjoyed. It was like a very small one. So I want to let's pick that one apart for just a second, and then let's jump into John 10, 11, 12. So in Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, I can't remember the verse reference right now, but he says, if someone forces you to carry their stuff a mile, go with him 2 miles. So they have this like cool depiction of Yeshua's teaching, and they get interrupted on their travels by some Roman soldiers, and they're like, hey, take our stuff. You're carrying our stuff. They got to drop their things. And they do. They go. And they walk a mile. And when they get to the mile marker, they're like, all right.
Which was cool to see the mile marker.
Right. When they get there, Jesus just keeps going.
Right.
Just keeps going. And
they're all like, what?
They're like, wait, what's going on? But what we loved about that is that, one, we got to see Jesus' teaching in a visual way.
Right.
Which was just really fun to see it actually take flesh.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was super
and
fun.
it's such a small little phrase in the Sermon on the Mount, but then it becomes this whole 5-10 minute scene, and like you said, it comes to life. I think that's why we love The Chosen, when they take these little nuggets, and then it's like you said, brings it to life. And then what really hit both of us, we were talking about this, was that I'd never thought about it before, but you end up seeing that when they take it the second mile, then the Roman soldiers are like,
the flip side.
Why would you do that? Like, what are you doing? Like, it starts all of a sudden they're encountering love and self-sacrifice and servanthood that they've never experienced. And they're like, and I've never thought about how that would have impacted the Gentile Roman soldiers.
Right.
And I was like, wow, it totally would have.
Right.
Because like you said,
you're like, it shakes you out of your normal, right?
That's not how the empire works. That's not how the military works. It's like, and they're like, it's the upside down kingdom, right? They're encountering the true kingdom.
Exactly.
That's upside down to this world, but it's actually right side up.
It's the right side,
But oh man, that was
fun.
You.
It was just fun. One, like I said, to see it take shape, and then 2, to see that flip side was just cool, because that's what Jesus' teaching does, is that there's ramifications all over the place, and so it doesn't just work on us. It actually affects, because it's all about, we're loving God and we're loving neighbor. Well, who is my neighbor? Well, even that Roman soldier is my neighbor, right? So,
I have another highlight, which was I loved so there's this kind of depiction where Zebedee and some of the women, they're crushing the olives that he's grown, and you're seeing the first pressing, and Yeshua is kind of thinking about the future persecution that happens to him, and he's getting emotional, and you can feel, this is part of the heaviness of these episodes, that he's starting to feel and see that the crucifixion is coming, and then all of a sudden, in the midst of that kind of sorrow, Gaius, this born again Gaius, Roman centurion, he comes up to Yeshua, and the scripture just screamed at me from Hebrews 12, for the joy set before me, I endured the cross. Right. He's like, and joy there, he's talking about us. He's talking about humanity.
Exactly.
He's talking about for humanity set before him, he endured the cross. So it's like Gaius comes out and he's like, it's going to be so hard. How am I going to do it, Lord? Then it's like, I'll do it for him.
That's
I was just like,
that's
good. That's that reminder of, no, it's these friendships, this second commandment, love, no greater love than this, right? So I love that part.
So we're seeing this crushing coming, right? And he's saying these things, and he even says, I'm the good shepherd, and the shepherd lays down his life for his sheep.
Exactly.
So maybe you want to jump into this Hanukkah sermon.
Yeah, go for it.
So again, like we said, go read John 10, 11, and 12, because there's this cool depiction. We actually get to go to Jerusalem in the chosen land here. Get to go up to Jerusalem, get to see a little bit of the temple.
Right. Every time I'm like, Chosen, show us the temple. They like give you this little glimpse. Did you notice that if you pause, you could kind of see some big minaret?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You leaned over to me and said that. I was taking notes and I missed it. And I was like, oh,
but I want to see the actual temple and maybe
because they were what,
smoke from the altar
feet high or something like the minaret.
Yeah, 8, maybe 80 something.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy. So this was another, I think, highlight for us is, they're leading up to this sermon that Jesus wants to give in Jerusalem, right? So they're a little nervous and, for a good reason. But they get there, and the thing I really enjoyed about these couple scenes of when Jesus starts giving these teachings is you just get to see it and feel it, and like the setting is great. You're walking in and there's people everywhere. There's animals for the sacrifice. There's religious leaders walking around, and they're just kind of walking in, and he sits down and he starts teaching. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that's how it could have been. That's how it could have been. Yeah. Like you could see him going somewhere, starting to just, hey, this is what's going on. This is what the Father wants you to know. His disciples around him, they're listening. Other people start listening. It starts to create a stir, because that obviously happened. And then they're in Solomon's colonnade, and then it gets serious, right? Which, if you go and read John 10, it gets serious.
It gets serious.
And they're like, hey, how long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you're the Messiah, tell us.
Right.
And he's like, I did tell you, and it gets really serious. But there's this one phrase actually in the section before that I love that they actually said in this episode, was that Jesus says in John 10:16, I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them in also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock and one shepherd. And just as like a fun one to just pull apart, and he's in the Jewish temple. Right. He's in Jerusalem. He's talking to Jewish people. Right. But again, we're seeing these glimpses throughout these couple episodes with Gaius and so on. Like there's Gentiles that he's got his eyes on too. And so he's seeing the gospel going forth to all the world. Yeah. And there will be one God, one Father, one Lord, all this oneness reality of his kingdom is just so amazing and so beautiful.
Yeah, Yeshua, he lives and demonstrates the Jew first principle, meaning he comes and he's born and lives in Israel.
Right.
Not in New York.
Right.
We didn't exist, I guess. But there could have been Native Americans there, but it wasn't like a nation state, right?
Right.
But the point is that he came to Israel first. And he actually says, I came only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right.
Straight up says
he came for those who needed a doctor, right? No, not those who were well. And so, but then there's also this reality. It's to the Jew first, and also to the Greek, also to the nations. And so you see it's not his main focus of his ministry, but it doesn't mean that he didn't care about the nations.
For sure.
And I love it, what you were saying. It's like one flock.
Yep, family.
There's actually one family. Yep. And there's one shepherd. And we're Jews and Gentiles, and we're male and female. We're all these different ethnicities, but there's only one family. Yep. And so, and this is the controversy of Zion. This is the controversy of Yeshua that's happening. So much so, it says in the text also that they capture really well.
They do.
They said they picked up stones and began to, that scene is what? It's a good scene. Yeah. It's kind of funny too, though.
They got their box of rocks.
They're like, give us some stones, and they show this cart, and then
it was the stoning cart.
It was was there a stoning cart on the Temple Mount?
Maybe there was a guy that how they have concessions.
Right. Get your stones. They weren't stoning people that often.
We got granite, we got limestone, we got
Jerusalem stone. Yeah, they just took all the different types of rocks for granite.
Nice. Nice.
Didn't they?
Nice.
No.
It was
not a funny scene.
It was not a funny
Not a
scene.
funny scene.
That part made me kind of giggle because
Yeah.
it was like,
What?
let's go get the box of rocks. Maybe, who knows? I don't
Right.
know. But yeah, it got serious, and
Yeah.
and even in John 10, verse 39, it says again they sought to arrest him, but he escaped from their hands.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, who knows how intense that was?
Right.
Like, to me, that sounds intense.
Yeah.
Like, there's little phrases like that in the text that you can just
You read past.
you read, and it's like, oh well, he floated out
Right.
of the temple and onto the Mount of Olives and slept gently. You know,
I
it's
think
like,
I think sometimes maybe I've thought of them as like something even miraculous happened, like he
Sure.
passed through them or something. But the way the Chosen depicts it, which is very plausible, is that Peter and his arms.
hold on, we got okay. Make your point, and then we gotta pause there for a second.
We can,
We're gonna pause.
Yeah, we can pause.
Let's pause. The focus is shifted for us.
Yeah.
You know, if you've been tracking with us for a little bit, we've poked fun a little bit at Peter's shorts and how they've just progressively gotten shorter.
Or no, they were just always short, I think.
Or maybe
Weren't they?
his legs just got nicer.
But
sorry,
now you
that
don't
was-
even notice his legs. Now, all I'm seeing is his arms, you know? And like the way he walks, it's almost like, look at these arms, you know?
I mean, don't get me wrong, dude's jacked.
Yeah.
But
Right. But I mean, this is like almost a theme of season 4, I feel like.
Simon's guns.
But then like Simon's arms, Simon Peter's arms,
yeah.
and then Simon the Zealot's, you know, they're actually holding back the crowd
Yeah.
and the religious leaders
Right.
from stoning Yeshua. And I think I had never really thought about his disciples as his
Bodyguards.
Yeah.
His security detail.
That's how they definitely depict Peter.
right. And Simon the Zealot.
And
right?
I think
Like,
it's plausible. I hadn't really thought about it like that.
I never thought about that. Well, I mean, I guess you go to the garden, like the Gethsemane garden.
And Peter was carrying a sword.
He's
right?
packing,
Yeah.
and he chops a dude's ears off, or ear off. Excuse me.
That's
intense.
They're totally showing that.
Now-
scene. They're totally doing that.
I have a question. How do you cut someone's ear off? I think it's a miss.
Mm-hmm.
I think he misses, which is a good thing. Good for temple servant guy. You know, it's like if he hits him square on, it's dead town.
Or I think he ducks. I think he was going to chop off his head. He ducks and then he goes like this. So swing one's a miss.
Maybe he does one of these.
Swip like Matrix, like
Yeah, like, swip. And then, who knows if it was his whole ear or just, that Dallas and Ryan and Tyler enjoy writing that one. 'Cause that'll be interesting.
Another funny part
We digress.
was like they did this whole thing throughout of like hugging.
There was a hug theme.
It was like
Yeah.
Gaius comes to faith. It's like this holy moment, and he's all like stoked. And then he's like, Matthew, and Matthew's like doesn't quite understand what's going on. And then Peter's like, I guess.
And he's like, a quick one. Quick one.
Right, is that what it was?
Something like that.
A quick
It was
one.
like, that was funny. That was funny.
But then it came back around later, and Matthew hugged somebody.
I don't remember who he hugs, but
which was
yeah.
like a moment. So that was
And Peter hugged Matthew in the last triplet of episodes we watched, which was a really beautiful mid-rush moment.
Yeah. It was
So
there are good mid-rush moments,
Totally.
Totally. Another mid-rush moment, that's funny. Mid-rush moments with Sam and was what's his name? Judas's friend.
his old
bad guy friend.
He was apprenticed to or whatever. Yeah.
And he's like, Hades and sticks.
We don't recommend that you say that as a substitutionary
I
word,
thought that was a funny depiction.
but it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny.
So, yeah. But Judas is getting bad, warning you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
It's not going well.
It's getting a little messy, and it's not fun to watch.
No, it's not fun. It's painful.
Yeah, you can see him. It's a slow decay.
It's a slow decay.
Slow decay, which is it's sad. It's not good, but Jesus saw it coming.
It's part of the story, right? I think it's like you don't really want to read and remember that part of the story, but it's...
Betrayal is never a fun one. Anyway, what else we got, Tom?
Well, one of the things that there was a big emphasis on Hanukkah.
There was, very big.
Because John 10 is Hanukkah. Yeah. We'll just pause there for a second.
Yeah, John 10:22. Yeah.
This is amazing, you think about it. Okay. Hanukkah is not in the Old Testament.
Nope.
It's in the New Testament.
Correct.
That's so, like...
I don't know that people know. I didn't know that,
Because it happens in between the Old and the New Testament. And so this is, right, it's known as a Jewish holiday, not a Christian holiday. And yet the only place we find it in the Bible is in the Gospels.
Right there. Because in most translations, they'll say Feast of Dedication.
Exactly. Right. And because Hanukkah means dedication.
Yeah.
So they are celebrating the fact that the Maccabees defeated the Seleucid Greeks and Antiochus of Epiphanes, and so they're celebrating them when they rededicate the temple.
Yeah.
But here's my challenge. So what the Chosen's doing, again, midrash presentation here, is they're wanting to emphasize the Jewishness of Jesus.
Right.
And so the way they're doing that a lot of times is by using Rabbinic Judaism. Now, the challenge is, of course, that Rabbinic Judaism is not first century Judaism.
Correct.
Rabbinic Judaism is a later development, and they're doing that to create the Jewishness of Jesus, but also because a lot of times we don't know exactly what first century Jewish expression looked like. It's a long time ago, and there's only so many manuscripts that tell us things.
For sure.
So, but I will say this, that they're telling the story of Hanukkah. Yeshua's, they're acting it out, and Yeshua's kind of being the narrator, if you will.
He's the MC of the Hanukkah event. Yeah.
Of the reenactment.
Yeah.
But he says one thing that isn't true, and that is that he talks about the famous story of the oil that they find after they defeat the Seleucids, and that it lasts for 8 days, and it's this miracle, and that's why that Hanukkah is 8 days.
Right.
And that's kind of like the traditional story, although that story is actually not in the book of Maccabees. It's in the Gemara, written about 600 years after the story of the Maccabees.
Right.
But I do think it's a great story, and I think it captures the essence of it. It's a miraculous story that they win.
It could be possible.
Yeah, it could have happened for sure. But it's a later account. But the reason Hanukkah lasts for 8 days is not because of the,
an oil miracle.
An oil miracle. Yeah. It actually says it specifically in the book of Maccabees, in 2 Maccabees. It says it's because of they're celebrating Sukkot. They're celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles.
Right.
And then it says in the text that they weren't able to celebrate Sukkot because they were wandering in the mountains and caves like wild animals. You can look it up. It's 2 Maccabees 10:6. So why this is significant, because the 8 days of Hanukkah is because Sukkot is really, it's 7 days plus 1.
Right. Which equals 8.
Which equals 8. Which is a whole nother teaching that you can go in on our channel, where I talk about the significance of the 8 days. But what happened was in Solomon, when they dedicate Solomon's temple, they dedicated it during Sukkot.
Right.
So they're actually reliving Sukkot for several reasons, because they're wanting to rededicate the temple. So they're remembering Solomon, they're remembering Sukkot, and that's why it's 8 days.
Bingo.
So I think that's significant. It's a much richer, I think, reason on why we the Jewish people still celebrate Hanukkah thousands of years later.
So when you're seeing those things, you might just be seeing a rabbinic tradition, and maybe it's not a first century tradition or a biblical command, but it could be a rabbinic
for
tradition.
sure. Yeah, they give the blessing traditional rabbinic Jewish blessing before lighting the candles.
Right.
Also, whether that's first century, I'd say probably not. But again, they're trying to bring you into and kind of experience the Jewishness, the Jewish kind of culture aspect. And again, this is Midrash, so if you see it in these terms, you can appreciate what they're trying to do.
Right. Maybe one last highlight for me is this developing story of Shemuel and Joseph or Yosef of Arimathea. And we see in the biblical text, we see Joseph of Arimathea at the end of the story, being very generous and seeming like he's a follower of Yeshua.
Definitely, yeah.
And so we're seeing this again, extra biblical progression of him, seeking and finding. And that's actually one cool part I thought that was just part of the story was Joseph was sitting in this room studying, and he's writing down Yeshua's words of saying like ask, seek, and knock, and he has this interaction with his father of like, if I ask for bread, would you give me a stone? And he's like, if you then who are evil know how to give good gifts to me, like how much more will my Father, right? And so he's just rehashing Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount and writing it down, and you're seeing this like this change in his heart and in Shemuel's heart, which I think it's a plausible thing. Like you're seeing the corruption in the Sanhedrin. You're seeing they're arguing about resurrection and they're arguing about all sorts of stuff. But you're also seeing some of these guys turn to Yeshua.
Exactly.
And which is really amazing.
It is.
Because like some people will argue it's like the Jews rejected Jesus, but they were also religious leaders that were like, I'm actually going to follow him as my Messiah, the Messiah of Israel. So it's cool to see that one. That to me, that's a fun, developing like side story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, many Jewish people followed Yeshua.
Many.
All the disciples are Jewish. But even a lot of the religious leaders, it says that thousands were zealous for the law, it says in the book of Acts.
Which myriads, Myriads were. Yeah.
But then, of course, we have evil, bad religious leaders as well. So it's all complicated and all happening at the same time. So
yeah.
Well, there we are, guys. So
that's our first impressions.
Enjoy this next 3 episodes, and we look forward to doing longer reactions to all this, kind of diving in even deeper.
For sure.
Please become a Grafted ambassador. You can join us. We have a monthly live gathering where we talk about all things Grafted, what's going on with Sam's goat, and so many other things you don't want to miss. So
I thought you were going to say you don't want to hear.
Yeah. Oh. So like, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.